My name is Rosella Crowder. I'm 18 years old, and this is for every daughter who was told she was being practical while her brother got called the future. 6 months ago, my mother burned my college applications in the kitchen sink while my father laughed at my SAT score. 1,470. Then he looked at me and said, "Save the money for your brother. Trevor's going D1. They thought that ended my future. It didn't. It just proved they had no idea who they were dealing with. Because by then, I'd already submitted every application online. They didn't know where I'd spent my summer. And they didn't know what my grandmother sealed inside the final letter she left behind before she died. By Thanksgiving, there were 22 people around our table. Trevor wore his football jersey like he was already famous. My mother poured wine. My father carved the turkey. And every person in that house acted like they already knew which child mattered more. Then the phone rang. My mother answered it, and I watched the color drain out of her face. "You mean my son?" That was the moment the lie my family had been living on finally began to split open. If you've ever been made to feel smaller inside your own home, stay with me. And if this story hits somewhere personal, you can tell me in the comments where you're watching from. But before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand how we got there. Let me take you back to the night it all started. May 15th, 2025, 7:30 in the evening. I was sitting at my desk upstairs when the SAT score email came through. I'd been refreshing my inbox every 10 minutes for 3 days. My hands were shaking when I clicked it open. 690 in math, 780 in verbal. I stared at those numbers for a full minute. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. It wasn't perfect. I knew kids who'd scored 1,500, 1,600. But it was good. It was really good. Good enough for the schools I'd been researching since freshman year. MIT Caltech, Stanford, Princeton. I printed the score report. The paper was still warm when I walked downstairs, and I remember how the edges curled slightly, how the ink smelled like possibility. Dad was in the living room watching football highlights. Trevor sat next to him on the couch, controller in hand, half paying attention to the TV and half playing some game on his phone. I stood in the doorway holding my printout, and I can still remember the exact pattern of light from the TV flickering across their faces. "I got my SAT score," I said. Dad glanced over his shoulder. "How bad?" The question didn't surprise me. It should have. Maybe. But it didn't. That's what happens when you're a daughter in a house that only sees sons. 1470, I said. He turned back to the TV. Laughed. Not a cruel laugh. At least, I don't think he meant it to be cruel. Just dismissive. Like I'd told him I got a B on a quiz that didn't matter. "That's cute, Rosie. Real cute." Trevor looked up from his phone for half a second, then back down. I caught his eye for just a moment. Something flickered there. Guilt, maybe, or discomfort. But he didn't say anything. Dad kept talking. "Trevor got 1080 and he's going D1. You think colleges care about tests anymore? They want athletes, leaders, kids who can do something, not just fill in bubbles." The paper in my hand felt suddenly heavy, like all those hours I'd spent studying, the weekends, the late nights, the practice tests, had just been erased. I stood there for a long moment. I was thinking I could apply. Apply where? He didn't look at me. "We've talked about this. College is expensive. We're putting everything into Trevor's future. He's got a real shot." "But scholarships." "Rosella." Mom's voice came from the kitchen doorway. I hadn't heard her walk up behind me. Her arms were crossed. Her face was set in that expression I knew too well, the one that meant the conversation was already over. "We've already decided. The money we've saved is for your brother. He needs camps, recruiting videos, visits. You're smart enough to figure out life without spending $100,000 we don't have. Need-based aid could... No. Dad's voice was flat, final. We're not filling out those forms. We're not spending our time on applications for schools you won't get into anyway. Trevor's the one with the future here. You're practical. You'll be fine. Practical girls stay close to home. That phrase, practical girls. I'd heard it my whole life. Practical girls don't dream too big. Practical girls don't ask for too much. Practical girls make room for their brothers. That was it. Conversation over. Dad turned up the volume on the TV. Mom went back to the kitchen. Trevor still hadn't looked up from his phone. I walked back upstairs, put the score report in my desk drawer, closed it quietly. My hands were shaking, but not from excitement anymore. From something else, something colder. And then I opened my laptop. I'd been working on my college applications for 2 months. 8 schools. Common App was already filled out. Supplemental essays were done. I'd written about the telescope I built in 10th grade from a kit I bought with babysitting money. About the summer I taught myself Python and built a program to track local weather patterns. About how I'd always looked up and wondered what it would take to build something that could go there. 2 days earlier, May 13th, 9:47 p.m., I'd hit submit on every single application. Online, digital, already sent. I pulled up my email and scrolled through the confirmations. Your application to MIT has been received. Application ID 2025-E A-09384. Thank you for applying to Caltech. Application ID 2025-EA-17839. Stanford University confirms receipt of your application. They could burn every piece of paper in this house. It wouldn't matter. I closed my laptop and lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling. There was a poster of the Andromeda Galaxy above my headboard. I'd put it up in 8th grade. Grandma Eleanor had bought it for me at a museum gift shop. She was the only one who ever asked what I wanted to be when I grew up. The only one who listened when I said aerospace engineer without laughing or changing the subject to Trevor's football stats. I thought about her a lot that night. She'd died 2 months earlier, March, just after my 17th birthday. Heart attack. Sudden. Grandpa Dale found her in the garden, kneeling next to the tomato plants she'd been teaching me to grow since I was 7. At the funeral, he'd pulled me aside and pressed something into my hand. An envelope. Sealed. My name written on it in Grandma's precise handwriting. Your grandma wanted you to have this, he'd said. But not yet. She told me I'd know when it's time. I'd tried to ask what it was, but he just shook his head and walked away, tucking the envelope back into his jacket pocket. I didn't know then that the envelope would change everything. But that's the thing about the truth. It doesn't need you to know it's coming. It just waits. The next night, Mom came into my room while I was reading. She didn't knock, just walked in and saw the stack of envelopes on my desk. 8 of them, pre-addressed to 8 different admissions offices. I'd printed them out weeks ago, before I knew I'd be submitting online. They were backups, just in case. Relics from a version of this story where I still believed my parents might change their minds. She picked one up, turned it over, looked at the return address. What is this? College applications. I thought we told you. I worked hard on them. I just wanted to... She didn't let me finish. She called Dad. Loud enough that I heard Trevor's footsteps stop in the hallway outside my room. He was listening. Dad came upstairs, took one look at the envelopes, and said, "Bring them downstairs." Why? Now, Rosella. I followed them down to the kitchen. My stomach was in knots. I knew what was coming. I could feel it. Trevor was at the table eating leftover pizza. He looked up when we walked in. Our eyes met for a second. He knew too. Mom spread the 8 envelopes out on the counter like evidence of a crime. MIT, Caltech, Stanford, Princeton, Cornell, Carnegie Mellon, Georgia Tech, University of Michigan. "You've been wasting time on this?" she said. The fluorescent kitchen light was too bright. It made everything look stark, clinical. I could see every line on her face, every bit of disappointment. "It's not wasting. We told you. Trevor needs this money. You're smart enough to get by without college. You don't need some expensive degree to figure out life." Dad picked up the Caltech envelope, read the address. His face hardened. "These places cost $70,000 a year. You think we're made of money? Financial aid? We're not doing it." He dropped the envelope back on the counter. "This is final, Rosella. You're going to have to accept that not everyone gets to go to college. Some people are built for it. Some people aren't. You're practical. That's a good thing. Practical girls stay close to home, get jobs, help their families. There's no shame in that." Mom gathered the envelopes into a pile. Her hands were steady, certain. She walked to the sink, turned on the faucet slightly, just enough to dampen the bottom of the steel basin. Then she dropped the envelopes in and pulled out a lighter. "Mom." She lit the corner of the MIT envelope. It caught fast. The orange flame spread to the others. I watched the paper curl and blacken. The addresses melted away. The ink ran like tears down the white paper before it all turned to ash. The smell hit me, that acrid, chemical smell of burning paper. It got in my hair, in my clothes. I can still smell it sometimes, even now, months later. "This is for your own good," Mom said, watching the flames. "You'll thank us later." Dad stood next to her, arms crossed. "Trevor's recruiting video cost us $6,800. We're investing in winners, not in fantasies." I looked at Trevor. He was staring at his plate, jaw clenched. Wouldn't meet my eyes. I wanted him to say something, anything. But he didn't. The envelopes burned down to ash, gray and black and curled at the edges. The smoke detector didn't go off. The ventilation fan above the stove pulled most of it out. Mom ran water over the ashes until they dissolved into gray sludge and washed down the drain. The sink made a hollow gurgling sound. "We're not being cruel," Mom said, drying her hands on a dish towel. "We're being realistic. Girls like you, smart, practical. You don't need a fancy degree. You can work, save money, help the family. That's valuable too. Girls like you. Not girls like someone else. Girls like me. Girls who don't get to dream." Dad called after Trevor. "Come on, champ. Let's watch your highlight reel again." Trevor stood up, looked at me for just a second, opened his mouth like he was going to say something. Then he followed Dad into the living room. I stayed in the kitchen, alone. The sink still smelled like burned paper. My hands smelled like it too. I turned on the faucet and washed them 3 times, but the smell wouldn't leave. I went back upstairs, opened my laptop, and checked my email one more time. "Your application to Caltech has been received. Application ID 2025-EA-17839. Submitted May 13th, 2025, 9:47 p.m." The timestamp stared back at me. 2 days before they burned the backup copies. 2 days before they thought they'd stopped me. They could burn paper. They couldn't burn what I'd already built. That night, lying in bed, I got another email. My phone buzzed on my nightstand. I almost didn't check it. I was exhausted, emotionally drained. But something made me reach for it. Subject line: NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. Internship decision. My heart stopped. I'd applied on a whim back in March, the same week Grandma Eleanor died. I was sitting in the funeral home during calling hours, watching relatives I barely knew tell stories about her, and I'd pulled out my phone and filled out the NASA application right there. Didn't tell anyone. The application asked for a transcript, an essay about my interest in aerospace, and 2 teacher recommendations. I'd submitted it at midnight and figured I'd never hear back. I clicked it open, read it once, then again, then a third time to make sure it was real. Congratulations! You have been selected for our summer internship program at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center, Propulsion Systems Testing Lab. Paid position, $18 per hour, 40 hours per week. Program dates, June 2nd through August 15th. Please confirm your acceptance by May 22nd. I sat up in bed. Read it again. NASA Marshall was in Huntsville. I lived in Huntsville. The facility was 22 minutes from my house. I could do this without anyone knowing. I hit reply, typed one word, yes. Sent it at 11:43 p.m. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed. But I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, at the Andromeda poster, and thought, this is it. This is how I build something they can't burn. June 2nd, 6:30 in the morning. The sky was that pale pre-sunrise gray. I borrowed Mrs. Patterson's car, our 78-year-old neighbor who didn't drive anymore. I'd been mowing her lawn since I was 14. When I asked if I could use her old Honda Civic for the summer, she handed me the keys and said, "Don't crash it, honey, and eat something before you leave. You look too skinny." I drove to NASA Marshall. The roads were empty. I had a granola bar in one hand and my phone in the other, GPS guiding me through streets I'd never taken before. When I pulled up to the security gate, my hands were shaking. I showed my ID. The guard checked a list, nodded, and waved me through. I parked in visitor parking. Walked to building 4500, got my badge at the front desk. MS-2025-I-NT-1138. They took my photo. I looked terrified in it, but I didn't care. They gave me a lab coat, a hard hat, a folder with orientation materials, and then they told me to report to Dr. James Whitmore. He was waiting for me in his office. 52 years old, 25 years at NASA. Graying hair, wire-rimmed glasses, coffee mug that said, "Failure is not an option, but it is data." He had a reputation for being brilliant and for not suffering fools. He looked at my badge, looked at me. "You're the youngest intern we've had in 5 years," he said. "Don't waste it." That first day, he took me on a tour of the propulsion test stands. Massive concrete structures where they fired rocket engines and measured thrust, temperature, fuel efficiency. The test stands were huge, stories tall, covered in sensors and blast shields and scorch marks from previous tests. When they fired an engine during a test run that afternoon, the ground shook. The sound was like thunder compressed into a single roar. I felt it in my chest, in my bones. It was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I stood there, hard hat on, safety goggles fogging up slightly, and I thought, this is where I belong. Dr. Whitmore had to shout over the noise. Most people talk about going to space. We build the things that get them there. I worked 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Test data analysis, computational modeling. I sat in on design reviews where engineers twice my age argued about nozzle angles and combustion chamber pressure. I learned CAD software, helped run simulations on propulsion efficiency. Every evening, I drove home around 6, parked Mrs. Patterson's car back in her driveway, walked into my house smelling faintly of machine oil and lab chemicals. No one ever asked where I'd been. The first week, Dad said, "Where were you?" I said, "Library." He said, "Good. Stay out of trouble." That was it. He went back to watching TV. Trevor had left for his quarterback camp in Florida the day after school ended. 2 weeks, $4,200. Elite QB Academy, they called it. When he came back in late June, the family threw him a welcome home dinner. Mom made his favorite: lasagna, garlic bread, Caesar salad. Dad asked him 100 questions about drills and footwork and what the coaches said about his potential. I sat at the table and ate quietly, listened to Trevor describe the camp. The way he talked, you'd think he was already being recruited by Alabama and Clemson, but I could see it in his eyes. The way they didn't quite meet Dad's when he answered. The way his voice got a little higher when he said, the coaches were really impressed. He was lying. Or at least exaggerating so much it might as well have been lying. Nobody asked about my summer. Not once. By week 4 at NASA, Dr. Whitmore gave me my own project, microthruster efficiency improvement. He handed me a folder of research papers, some of them decades old, some published just last year, and said, "See what you can do with this." I spent 3 weeks running simulations, tweaking variables, testing configurations. I ran 47 different simulations, adjusting the nozzle angle by 0.3 degrees each time, testing fuel mixture ratios, modifying the thrust vector control algorithms. By week 8, I had results. A 12% efficiency improvement over the current standard design. It wasn't revolutionary. It wasn't going to change spaceflight overnight. But it was real. It was publishable. Dr. Whitmore looked at my findings and nodded slowly. "This is good work, Rosella. This is publishable work. Most grad students don't produce results like this." I didn't tell him I was 17. Didn't tell him my parents had burned my college applications. Didn't tell him anything except what the data said. On August 10th, I checked my Caltech application portal during my lunch break. I was sitting in the NASA cafeteria, eating a sandwich I'd packed that morning, when the notification popped up. "Your application is under final review. Early decision results will be available December 15th. I screenshotted it, saved it in a hidden folder on my phone labeled Recipes, so no one would accidentally find it. August 15th was my last day at NASA. Dr. Whitmore called me into his office before I left. "We have something called the Pathways program," he said. "It's for students we want to keep long-term, internships during the school year, potential pathways to full-time positions after graduation. Are you interested?" "Yes," I said immediately. "I'll put your name in. You should hear back by November." He shook my hand, told me I'd done exceptional work, told me not to let anyone convince me I wasn't capable of anything I set my mind to. I wanted to tell him that someone already had tried, that they'd burned my future in a kitchen sink and laughed about it. But I just thanked him and left. That night at dinner, Dad said, "Trevor starts varsity next week. Big year ahead. This could be the year scouts really start paying attention." Mom said, "Rosella, you should get a job. Something to help with bills. Retail, maybe. Or waitressing." I looked at her, set down my fork. "I have been working." "Where?" "Around." "What?" She didn't ask what I meant, didn't ask for details, didn't ask if I was okay or what I'd been doing all summer. Just nodded and went back to talking about Trevor's practice schedule. I checked my bank account that night. $7,200, 40 hours a week for 10 weeks at $18 an hour, minus taxes. I'd earned more this summer than they'd spent on Trevor's camp. Nobody knew. And somehow, that made it even better. September came, school started. Senior year. Trevor made varsity. Not as the starter. Brady Wilson was the senior quarterback and he was good, actually good, the kind of player who might get recruited by mid-tier D2 schools. But Trevor was on the roster. Backup? Third string, technically, but Dad didn't mention that part when he told people. Friday night, September 5th. First game of the season. The whole family went. Huntsville High versus Grissom. The stadium was packed. Small-town Alabama football, where Friday nights are religion. We sat in the bleachers halfway up. Mom brought a blanket even though it was still 80 degrees. Dad wore a Huntsville hoodie and a baseball cap. Trevor stood on the sideline in his jersey. Number 12. I watched him from the stands. He looked nervous, kept adjusting his helmet, kept looking at the coach. The game was a blowout. Huntsville led 35-7 by the fourth quarter. Brady Wilson had thrown 4 touchdowns. He was good. Really good. The kind of good that made Trevor's D1 potential look like a fantasy. The coach pulled Brady with 6 minutes left and put Trevor in. Garbage time. The game was already over. The score didn't matter anymore. Trevor ran 2 handoffs, both times just handing the ball to the running back, no decision-making required. Then he threw 1 incomplete pass, underthrew it by 5 yards. The receiver had to stop and come back for it, and it still hit the ground. The clock ran out. Game over. In the parking lot afterward, Dad was on the phone with someone. I don't know who. Yeah, Trevor had some great plays tonight, really showed what he can do. I think there were some scouts in the stands. Hard to tell, but you could feel the energy. None of that was true. Mom was telling Mrs. Henderson, "Did you see how he carried himself out there? That's a D1 athlete. You can just tell." Trevor didn't say anything. He got in the car and stared out the window, jaw tight. I knew what he was thinking. I could see it in the set of his shoulders. He knew this wasn't real. He knew he'd only played because the game was already decided. Because it didn't matter. But he didn't correct them. At home, Dad got on the phone with Grandpa Dale. I was in the kitchen getting water when I heard it. "Yeah, Dad, Trevor had a great game tonight. Brady got a little banged up." Lie. So Trevor stepped in and really took command. Coaches are talking about giving him more playing time, maybe even starting him next week. None of that was true. Not a single word. I stood there, glass of water in my hand, listening to my father construct an alternate reality. Then the phone rang. Different phone. Dad's cell. He answered. "Hello? Yes, this is Mr. Crowder. About Trevor?" He paused. Listened. I could hear a tinny voice on the other end but couldn't make out words. "Uh-huh. Film. How much?" Another pause. His face changed. Excited now. "That seems expensive, but..." "Yeah, I see. Every kid needs one these days." "Okay, send me the information." He hung up. Mom came into the kitchen. "Who was that?" "Recruiting service. They make highlight films, send them to colleges. $3,200. I almost laughed. It wasn't a scout. It wasn't a college coach. It was a sales call. Some company that bought lists of high school athletes and cold called their parents selling overpriced recruiting packages. Mom said, "We should do it. We already spent $6,800 on the camp. This is different. This is Trevor's future. He needs a film. How else will colleges see his potential?" Dad sighed. "Fine. I'll call them back tomorrow." I realized in that moment that there had been no scout on the phone earlier. No college coach. Just my father's wishful thinking, dressed up as fact, and sold to Grandpa Dale and anyone else who would listen. But my parents would pay $3,200 for a recruiting video that would accomplish nothing. Because they needed to believe. Trevor was in the living room when I walked through. He looked at me. I looked back. For just a second, I saw something in his face. Guilt, maybe. Or exhaustion. Or both. Then he looked away. But here's what I didn't know until later. What Trevor told me months afterward, over coffee, when we finally talked about all of this. He'd seen my NASA badge. In early July, he'd been looking for his phone charger in the kitchen and found my backpack on a chair. The zipper was open. My badge was sitting right there on top. MS-2025-I NT-1138, with my photo and NASA Marshall Space Flight Center printed across the top. He'd picked it up, looked at it, realized what it meant, and he'd put it back, zipped up my bag, never said a word. He'd kept my secret. The only person in that house who knew the truth, and he'd protected me. I didn't know that then. But it matters to the story. Because Trevor wasn't the villain. He was just a kid drowning in expectations he never asked for. October 1st. Late at night. I was in my room when my phone buzzed. Email from Caltech. Portal update available. My hands shook as I opened it. Thank you for your early decision application. Your decision will be available December 15th at 5 p.m. Pacific Time. 2.5 months. I took a screenshot, filed it away in my recipes folder. The next week, I got an email from Dr. Whitmore. Pathways paperwork submitted. You're on the shortlist. Should hear back by mid-November. Great work this summer, by the way. The team still talks about your microthruster analysis. You've got a real future in this field. 2 secrets now. Caltech pending, NASA pending. No one in my family knew about either one. I was building something in the dark. Brick by brick, number by number, application by application. And the best part? They couldn't burn what they didn't know existed. Mid-October. Sunday dinner. Aunt Linda and Uncle Joe came over with their kids, my cousins, Emma, 16, the twins, Jake and Ryan, 12, Madison, 9, and baby Olivia, 2, who spent most of dinner throwing Cheerios on the floor. The table was set for 10. Trevor sat at the head, next to Dad, the position usually reserved for the man of the house. I helped Mom set out the food: pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, rolls. Everyone settled in. Dad said grace. Then the conversation turned, as it always did, to Trevor. Aunt Linda said, "Trevor, how's football going?" "Good, we're 5-2. Uncle Joe said, "You starting yet?" Trevor hesitated, looked at his plate. "Not yet, but Coach says—" Dad interrupted. "Trevor's being humble. Scouts are circling. We've had calls." That was a lie. I knew it. Trevor knew it. But nobody else did. Aunt Linda beamed. "That's wonderful. Which schools?" Dad smiled mysteriously. "Can't say yet. Don't want to jinx anything. But let's just say we're very optimistic." Uncle Joe raised his glass. "To Trevor. Best of luck, kid." Everyone drank. Then Aunt Linda turned to me. "What about you, Rosella? What are your plans for next year?" Mom answered before I could. Her voice was light, casual, like she was discussing the weather. "Rosella's taking a gap year. Not everyone's cut out for college right away. She's going to figure out what she wants to do, maybe get a job, save some money." Not everyone's cut out for college. The words hit me like a slap, even though I'd heard variations of them 100 times. I didn't correct her. I just cut my pot roast into smaller and smaller pieces. Cousin Emma leaned over. She was sitting next to me, whispered, "But you're smart, right? I heard you got like a 1470 on your SAT. That's really good." I nodded. "Yeah." "So why aren't you applying to college?" Before I could answer, Dad's voice cut across the table. "Tests don't mean much anymore, Emma. Real world's about grit, about being able to perform under pressure. Some people are book smart. Some people are life smart." The implication was clear. I was book smart. Trevor was life smart. And life smart was better. Dad raised his glass again. "To Trevor. Built for greatness." Everyone drank. I didn't. I just sat there, fork in hand, thinking about the Caltech portal I'd checked that morning, thinking about Dr. Whitmore's email, thinking about the $7,200 in my bank account that no one knew existed. After dinner, I helped clear plates. Trevor was alone in the kitchen when I walked in with a stack of dishes. He looked at me. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. I set the dishes on the counter. "For what?" He glanced toward the dining room where we could hear Dad laughing loudly at something Uncle Joe said. You know. I looked at him. Really looked at him. He looked tired, thinner than usual. There were dark circles under his eyes. You okay? I asked. He shrugged. I'm fine. He wasn't. But I didn't push it. He picked up a dish towel, started drying the plates I'd just set down. You're going to do something amazing, he said. I don't know what, but you are. Then he walked away, dish towel still in his hands. I stood there in the kitchen, alone with the sound of water running in the sink, and I thought, he knows. He doesn't know the details, but he knows. He knew this was all wrong, but he didn't know how to stop it. And neither did I. Not yet. If you're still watching, if this is hitting close to home, if you've ever had to build your future in silence while everyone else cheered for someone else, drop a comment right now. Just write, I'm building too. Let me know I'm not alone in this. Let me know you're out there, working on something they can't see yet. November 10th. I was at school sitting in AP Calculus when the email came through. My phone buzzed in my backpack. I wasn't supposed to check it. Mrs. Chen had a strict no phones policy, but something made me glance at my watch. Email notification. From NASA. I waited until the bell rang, walked to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, opened the email with shaking hands. NASA Marshall Space Flight Center, Pathways Program. I read it standing there, backpack at my feet, the fluorescent bathroom light buzzing overhead. Congratulations! You have been selected for continuation in our Pathways Student Internship Program. Spring semester schedule available, $20 per hour. Please confirm availability. I replied immediately. Right there in the school bathroom, sitting on the edge of a toilet seat, fingers flying across my phone screen. Available. Thank you. I accept. Sent it. Then I sat there for 5 minutes, just breathing. $20 an hour. Spring semester. Pathways program. The pipeline to full-time positions after graduation. NASA wanted me back. November 15th. Another email. Different sender. Caltech early decision. Decision available. Not the decision itself. Just a notification that it was coming. December 15th. 5 p.m. Pacific. 8 p.m. Eastern. I marked it in my calendar. Set 3 separate reminders. 1 month. November 20th. 5 p.m. Pacific. 8 p.m. Eastern. I was in my room. Door locked. Curtains closed. Laptop open on my bed. I refreshed the portal. The page loaded slowly. Too slowly. My internet was garbage. Small-town Alabama DSL that maxed out at like 3 megabits per second. Then the words appeared. Congratulations. Just that, at first. The word hung there on the screen while the rest of the page loaded. Then more text appeared. On behalf of the California Institute of Technology, I am delighted to offer you admission to the class of 2030. I stared at it, refreshed the page to make sure it was real. It was still there. I scrolled down. Financial aid information. Need-based grant, $68,000 per year. Work study, $2,000 per year. Student contribution, $1,200 per year. Total over 4 years, $272,000 in aid. I would graduate debt-free. From Caltech, one of the best STEM schools in the world. I sat there on my bed, laptop screen glowing in the dark room, and I felt something crack open inside me. Not in a bad way, in the way a seed cracks when it finally starts to grow. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run downstairs and shove the screen in their faces and say, "See? See? I'm not the one who's not cut out for college. I'm the one they want." But I didn't. I took a screenshot, saved it, closed the laptop, Went downstairs for dinner like nothing had happened. Dad was on the phone. Yeah, Trevor's got a real shot this year. His highlight film is going to blow coaches away. We spent some serious money making sure it's professional quality. $3,000, but it's an investment. $3,200. For a video that would sit on a recruiting service website that no college coach would ever look at. Because that's not how recruiting works. That's not how any of this works. But he didn't know that. Or maybe he did. And he just couldn't admit it. I sat down at the table. Mom had made spaghetti. Trevor was already eating, eyes down, not talking. Nobody asked about my day. Nobody asked if anything had changed. I ate my spaghetti and thought about Pasadena, about palm trees and mountains and rocket propulsion labs, about a future I'd built in secret while they watched football highlights. I went to bed that night thinking about December, about Thanksgiving, 27 days away. 22 people would be coming to our house, and I still hadn't decided if I was going to tell them. November 21st. Mom started planning Thanksgiving in earnest. 22 confirmed guests. She made lists on yellow legal pads. Turkey, 24 pounds. Costco run. Folding tables, extra chairs, pies, pumpkin, pecan, apple, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce. She was stressed. I could see it in the way she snapped at Dad when he suggested we just order a pre-made meal from the grocery store. Absolutely not. This family makes Thanksgiving from scratch. This family. As if we were some kind of unit. As if we all wanted the same things. Grandpa Dale called to confirm he was coming. I answered the phone. "Hey, kiddo," he said. "How are you?" "I'm good, Grandpa." "Really?" I paused. Grandpa had a way of asking questions that made you tell the truth even when you didn't want to. "Yeah, really. Your grandma would have been proud of you, you know." My throat tightened. "For what?" "For being you. For not letting them make you smaller." I didn't know what to say to that. He cleared his throat. "I'll see you Thursday. Got something for you. Something your grandma left." "The letter?" "Yeah. Time's right, I think." We hung up. I sat there holding the phone, thinking about Grandma Eleanor, about the garden, about the telescope she bought me, about the way she used to say, "You're named after me, you know, so you've got to live up to it." November 23rd. A package arrived. Return address: California Institute of Technology, Office of Admissions, 1200 East California Boulevard, Pasadena, California, 91125. I was home when the mailman came, grabbed it before anyone else could see, took it straight to my room, opened it with shaking hands. Welcome packet. Thick, glossy. Course catalog, campus map, housing information, a letter from the dean welcoming me to the class of 2030, a Caltech pennant, a sticker. I spread it all out on my bed, touched each piece like it might disappear. This was real. This was mine. I hid it all in the back of my closet, behind boxes of old clothes I never wore anymore. November 25th. Another email from Caltech Financial Aid. "We have attempted to reach you by phone regarding your financial aid package. Please verify your enrollment plans and confirm your understanding of the aid offer. We need to hear from you by December 1st to hold your spot." I didn't respond yet. 3 more days until Thanksgiving. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, at the Andromeda poster, thinking about what would happen if I told them. If I just walked downstairs right now and said it out loud. I got into Caltech, full ride, $272,000. I'm leaving in August. But I didn't, because part of me, a part I'm not proud of, wanted to see how far they'd go. How long they'd keep pretending Trevor was the golden child. How long they'd keep pretending I didn't exist. I wanted them to say it in front of everyone, in front of Grandpa Dale, in front of Aunt Linda, in front of Mrs. Henderson, who used to be a guidance counselor and knew exactly what a 1,470 SAT score meant. I wanted them to say I wasn't college material in front of 22 witnesses, so I could prove them wrong in front of 22 witnesses. I'm not proud of that, but it's true. So I waited. November 27th, Thanksgiving, 7 a.m. I woke up to the sound of Mom already moving around downstairs, pots and pans clanging, the oven door opening and closing. I came down in my pajamas and started helping. Peeled potatoes, chopped celery, diced onions for the stuffing. Made the stuffing from scratch. Bread cubes, broth, sage, thyme, the onions and celery I'd just chopped. My eyes watered from the onions. Or maybe from something else. I'm not sure. Dad set up the tables. We had one long table that extended with 3 leaves. It could seat 14 when fully extended, plus 2 folding tables pushed against it. 22 seats total. He covered everything with matching tablecloths Mom had bought specifically for this. Coordinating napkins. Actual china, not paper plates. Grandma Eleanor's chair was left empty at one end of the long table. Dad set her framed photo on the table next to the empty seat. 8 by 10. Her in the garden, smiling, holding a tomato she'd just picked. Mom put flowers around the frame. White roses. Grandma's favorite. She teared up looking at it. She would have loved this. I looked at the photo, at Grandma's smile, and I thought, she did love this. But not the way you think. She loved the people. She loved me. She loved truth. And she knew none of you were telling it. 10 a.m. Trevor came downstairs wearing his Huntsville High football jersey. Number 12. Name Crowder across the back. Dad grinned when he saw it. Perfect. Show them who you are, son. Trevor nodded but didn't say anything. He looked pale, tired. You okay? I asked him. He glanced at me. Yeah, just nervous. You know. Family. I did know. Noon. Guests started arriving. Grandma and Grandpa Martinez first. Mom's parents. She hugged them, cried a little. Her mother was kind but distant. Her father barely acknowledged me, went straight to Dad, and started talking about Alabama football. Then Aunt Linda, Uncle Joe, and the kids. Emma hugged me and whispered, I'm rooting for you, whatever you're doing. I didn't know what she meant by that, but it felt good to hear. Uncle Rick, Dad's younger brother, works at a car dealership, loud and friendly. The Hendersons, Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, retired teachers from next door. Mrs. Henderson had been a guidance counselor for 30 years. She hugged me and said, How's senior year treating you? I said, Good. She said, Applied anywhere yet? I said, We'll see. And finally, Grandpa Dale. He was the last one through the door. 79 years old, still strong, still sharp. Wearing a button-down shirt and slacks, clean-shaven, hair combed. He hugged Mom, shook Dad's hand, hugged Trevor and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then he came to me. He held me for a long time, longer than usual. His arms were strong. He smelled like Old Spice and coffee. When he pulled back, he whispered, You okay? Always, Grandpa. He looked at me like he didn't quite believe me, like he could see something I was trying to hide. Your grandma left me something for you, he said quietly. I'll give it to you after dinner. It's time. My heart jumped. What is it? He just shook his head, patted my shoulder. Later. 1 p.m. Everyone gathered in the living room. Football on TV, Dallas versus Washington. Dad held court, sitting in his recliner, holding a beer, talking about Trevor's season. Incredible year, Dad said to Uncle Joe. Trevor's really come into his own. Coaches from 3 schools have reached out personally. Uncle Joe leaned forward. Which schools? Dad smiled, took a sip of beer. Can't say yet. Don't want to jinx anything. But let's just say we're fielding some very interesting calls. It was all bullshit. Every word. But Uncle Joe nodded, impressed. Aunt Linda looked at me. What about you, Rosella? What are you thinking for next year? Mom answered. She was standing in the doorway holding a dish towel. Her voice was light, pleasant. Rosella's figuring things out, taking time. Not everyone rushes into college. She's practical. She'll probably stay local. Get a job. Maybe go to community college eventually. Not everyone rushes into college. She'd upgraded from not everyone's cut out for college to not everyone rushes into college. Slightly softer phrasing, same meaning. Mrs. Henderson, bless her, said, Rosella, with your SAT score, you have options. Have you thought about engineering programs? Or computer science? Dad waved a hand. Dismissive. She's practical. Thinking local. Staying close to home. That's smart, actually. College isn't for everyone. Some kids need to figure out who they are first. Some kids. Not Trevor, obviously. Just some kids. Trevor sat on the couch, quiet, uncomfortable. He kept glancing at me, then looking away. Emma leaned over to me. We were sitting on the floor because all the good seats were taken. She whispered, You were always the smart one. I whispered back, Trevor's smart too. She lowered her voice even more. Not like you. Everyone knows it. I don't get why they act like he's the special one. I didn't have an answer for that. 2:30. Mom called everyone to the table. The seating arrangement told you everything you needed to know about this family. Dad at the head, Mom at the foot, Trevor next to Dad, in the seat of honor, Grandpa Dale next to Mom. Me? I was 3 seats down, wedged between Cousin Madison and Uncle Rick. I helped carry food from the kitchen, set out dishes, poured water and iced tea, refilled bread baskets. 3:15. Everyone was finally seated, plates full, turkey carved. The table looked beautiful, all that china, the flowers, the candles Mom had lit, Grandma's photo watching over everything. Dad stood to say grace. We all bowed our heads. Lord, we thank you for this food, for this family, for the blessings of another year. We're especially grateful for Trevor's success this season and for the opportunities ahead of him. We ask that you guide him toward the right path. Amen. Amen. Not a word about me. Not even, we're grateful for all our children. Just Trevor. Just his success. Just his opportunities. I kept my head down. Didn't look up. Didn't want anyone to see my face. Then the phone rang. It was loud. Shrill. Old school landline ring because Dad refused to get rid of the house phone even though everyone had cell phones now. The ringtone. Mom had set it years ago to some generic melody, but it was the same one Grandma Eleanor used to use on her phone. Everyone froze for just a second. Mom looked at the caller ID on the base station across the room. Unknown number, 626 area code, California. Should I get it? She said. Dad said, It's Thanksgiving. Let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Same number. Grandpa Dale said, Maybe it's important. Mom picked up, hit the button. Hello? Pause. Yes, this is Mrs. Crowder. Pause. Her face changed. Confusion, then shock. I'm sorry, who is this? Longer pause. The table had gone completely quiet. Forks frozen midair. 22 people listening. Caltech? The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Mom's eyes went wide. She looked directly at me. You're trying to reach... whom? Her voice cracked slightly. My daughter? I felt every single pair of eyes in that room turn toward me, all 22. Even baby Olivia stopped throwing food. Mom pressed the phone to her chest, covered the speaker. Her face was pale. Rosella, did you apply to Caltech? I stood up, walked over, extended my hand. I'll take it. She handed me the phone. Her hand was shaking. I put it to my ear. This is Rosella Crowder. The voice on the other end was clear, professional, female. Hello, Rosella. This is Dr. Sarah Chen from the California Institute of Technology Office of Financial Aid. I apologize for calling on a holiday, but we've been trying to reach you for several days. Did you receive our aid package notification? 22 people listening to every word I said. Yes, ma'am, I did. Wonderful. I wanted to personally confirm the need-based grant of $68,000 per year. Is this amount acceptable to you? Yes. Excellent. We'd love to invite you and your family to campus on December 8th for our admitted students reception. It's an opportunity to meet faculty, tour the labs, and connect with other incoming freshmen. Will you be able to attend? I'll be there. Perfect. I'll send you the details via email this evening. And Rosella? Yes? Congratulations. We're absolutely thrilled to have you as part of Caltech's class of 2030. Your application was exceptional. Thank you. I hung up, set the phone down on the table. The silence was so thick you could cut it. Dad stood up slowly. His face was red. What the hell just happened? I looked at him, looked at Mom, looked at Trevor, then looked at Grandpa Dale. He was smiling. Actually smiling. I said, I got into Caltech. You applied. Dad's voice was tight. Without telling us? I told you I wanted to apply. You burned my envelopes. Remember? Kitchen sink. May 16th. Mom's voice was shaking now. We said no. We said save the money for Trevor. We said, I didn't need your money, I said calmly. I got a full ride. $68,000 a year in need-based aid. That's $272,000 over 4 years. Uncle Joe, God bless Uncle Joe, did the math out loud immediately. $272,000? Gasps around the table. Aunt Linda's hand went to her mouth. Rosella, that's incredible. Mrs. Henderson was already crying. I knew it. I knew you could do it. Dad's face was getting redder. You went behind our backs? After we explicitly told you no? I submitted my applications online, I said. September 15th, 2 days before you burned the backup copies I'd printed. Trevor's head snapped up. Before? I nodded. 2 days before. Emma whispered, Oh my God. The table was completely silent again. Dad was sputtering now. When did you find out? November 20th. A week ago? And you didn't tell us? I looked at him. Really looked at him. Would you have listened? Silence. Nobody answered. Grandpa Dale stood up, walked over to me, pulled me into a hug, whispered in my ear, loud enough that people nearby could hear. Eleanor would be so damn proud. Then he said louder so everyone could hear. There's more, isn't there? I pulled back, looked at him, nodded. Tell them, he said. I took a breath. I've been working at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center since June. Mom's voice cracked. What? Summer internship. Propulsion Systems Testing Lab. $18 an hour. 40 hours a week. 10 weeks. I earned $7,200. The table erupted. NASA? You worked at NASA? That's where you were all summer? Dad's voice cut through. You said you were at the library. You didn't ask, I said. You never asked. I told you I was working. You assumed it was nothing. You didn't care enough to ask where. Aunt Linda's voice was soft, almost awed. Rosella, NASA, here in Huntsville? 22 minutes from this house, I said. Building 4500. Propulsion Systems Testing Lab. Dr. James Whitmore was my supervisor. I drove there every morning, came home every night, parked in Mrs. Patterson's driveway so you wouldn't see the car. No one asked where I'd been. Mrs. Henderson put both hands over her mouth. Rosella, honey, NASA internships are incredibly competitive. Hundreds of applicants for every spot. I know. And you got one. At 17. Yes, ma'am. Uncle Joe said, but Rosella, that's huge. That's career-making. NASA Pathways. That's the pipeline to full-time jobs after graduation. I nodded. They invited me back. Spring semester. $20 an hour. Grandpa Dale was still standing next to me. He put his hand on my shoulder. Tell them about your project. I looked at him. How did you know about that? He smiled. Your grandma and I didn't raise a fool. I called Dr. Whitmore last week. Asked him about you. He told me everything. My throat tightened. You called him? I had to know what you were up to. He said you're one of the most talented students he's ever worked with. Said your microthruster efficiency analysis was publishable. Said you ran 47 simulations, improved efficiency by 12%. Said you have a future in aerospace if you want it. I felt tears starting. Pushed them back. Dad's voice was hollow now. You worked at NASA. You got into Caltech. You did all of this. Without us. I did it despite you, I said quietly. Mom was crying now. Full tears running down her face, mascara starting to smudge. Trevor stood up. His chair scraped against the floor. Everyone looked at him. I'm sorry, he said. His voice was shaking. Dad said, sit down, Trevor. This isn't about you. Yes, it is. Trevor's voice got louder, stronger. It's about all of us. It's about what we did to her. Dad stood up too now. Trevor, don't. You spent $10,000 on me, Trevor said, cutting him off. Camps, recruiting videos, film services, training sessions, new cleats. That QB academy that was supposed to get me recruited. All of it. The table was frozen. Trevor's voice cracked. I'm backup quarterback. I've played 12 snaps all season, 12. All in garbage time. All in games that were already over. No scouts, no offers, not even community colleges, because I'm not good enough. I'm not D1. I'm not even D2. I'm barely varsity. Dad's face was white now. Trevor. She did this on her own, Trevor said, looking at me. While you paid for my fake future. She got into Caltech. She worked at NASA. She earned money. She did everything right. And you... His voice broke. You told her she wasn't college material. You told her to stay home. You burned her applications in front of me and made me watch. He was crying now. Actually crying. You wanted me to be something I'm not so bad that you couldn't see she was already flying. He turned and walked out of the room. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I could hear him in the other room. Crying. Then the phone rang again. This time it was Grandpa Dale's cell phone. He pulled it out of his pocket. Looked at the screen. It's Martin Brooks, he said. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Who? Your mother's estate attorney. Dad sank back into his chair. Grandpa answered. Martin. Yes. Right now? Pause. All of them are here. He looked at Dad. Yes. Richard too. He hung up, dialed back, put the call on speaker, set the phone on the table next to Grandma Eleanor's photo. Martin Brooks's voice filled the room, deep, professional, measured. Good afternoon, everyone. Martin Brooks, attorney for the estate of Eleanor Crowder. I apologize for interrupting your holiday, but Dale asked me to call at this specific time. This concerns the trust Mrs. Crowder established before her death. Dad's voice was hoarse. What are you talking about? Your mother set aside $150,000 in a trust to be split equally between her two grandchildren, Trevor and Rosella, 75,000 each. The room was completely silent now. Even baby Olivia was quiet. However, there were specific conditions. Each grandchild receives their share upon acceptance to an accredited 4-year university, not community college, not vocational school, a 4-year institution. Aunt Linda's voice was barely audible. 150,000? Yes. Mrs. Crowder was very clear about her intentions. The money is to support higher education and only higher education. Martin continued. I've been monitoring both grandchildren's educational progress as executor of the estate. As of November 20th, 2025, Rosella Crowder was accepted to the California Institute of Technology. Is this correct, Rosella? Yes, sir, I said. Then, Rosella qualifies for immediate distribution of her $75,000. Funds will be transferred to her designated account within 5 business days. Uncle Joe's voice again, quiet. Doing the math nobody wanted to say out loud. $75,000. Dad found his voice. What about Trevor? Has Trevor been formally accepted to an accredited 4-year university? Silence. Longer silence. Dad finally said, He's being recruited. Has he received a formal acceptance letter? Even longer silence. Dad's voice was barely a whisper now. Not yet. Then his share remains in trust until he qualifies. Mom's voice was broken. Mother never told us about this. She specifically asked me not to, Martin said. His voice was gentle but firm. She said, and I'm quoting directly from our conversation, they'll try to interfere. They'll try to redirect the money to where they think it should go. Don't let them. The words hit like a bomb. Grandpa Dale reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out an envelope. Old, yellowed slightly. My name on it in Grandma Eleanor's handwriting. His hands were shaking as he broke the seal. There's one more thing, Martin's voice said through the phone speaker. Mrs. Crowder left a sealed letter to be read when the first grandchild qualified for distribution. Dale, are you ready? Yes, Grandpa said. His voice was thick. Aunt Linda said, Dale, what does it say? Grandpa unfolded the letter. A single sheet of paper, handwritten. I could see Grandma's neat script from across the table. Do you want me to read it? Grandpa asked, looking at me. I nodded. Everyone was looking at him now. He cleared his throat, started reading. Dale, if you're reading this, it means the kids are grown. I only have one thing to say. Rosella is the one. My breath caught. Grandpa's voice shook as he continued. She's got Eleanor in her. Quiet, brilliant, built to last. I watched her for 17 years. I saw what you all missed. She doesn't need to be loud to be extraordinary. She doesn't need permission to be brilliant. The money is hers when she earns it. And she will. Don't let them waste her. Tell her I'm proud. Tell her she's named after me for a reason. Tell her the stars were always meant for her. Eleanor. Silence. 8 seconds of complete total silence. Nobody breathed. Then Aunt Linda started crying. Then Mrs. Henderson. Then Emma. Then Grandma Martinez. Then Uncle Joe's voice cracking. Jesus Christ. Grandpa Dale was crying too now. He folded the letter carefully, handed it to me. I took it with shaking hands, read it again. My grandmother's handwriting. Small and precise and certain. Rosella is the one. She's got Eleanor in her. I realized in that moment, fully realized, for the first time, that I was named after her. Rosella, Eleanor. She'd given me her name. She'd seen something in me before I was old enough to see it myself. And she'd left me proof. The tears came then. First time since May. First time since they burned my applications. First time since I'd decided to build everything alone. But these tears were different. These tears were relief. Grandpa pulled me into a hug, held me tight, whispered, "She knew. She always knew. From the time you were born, she told me, that one's going to change the world, Dale. Don't you dare let them clip her wings." I buried my face in his shoulder and sobbed. Aunt Linda stood up, walked over, hugged me too. Then Mrs. Henderson, then Emma, then Uncle Joe, then Grandma Martinez, then Uncle Rick. One by one. Grandpa Martinez stood up, the man who'd barely acknowledged me all day, and walked over and said, "I'm sorry, kid. I should have paid more attention." I nodded, couldn't speak. My parents didn't move. They sat at the table. Dad's face was white. Mom was crying, but she didn't get up, didn't come to me. Trevor was still in the other room. I could hear him. Martin Brooks's voice came through the phone speaker one more time. "Rosella, I'll email you the trust distribution paperwork tomorrow morning. You'll need to designate an account for the transfer. Congratulations. Your grandmother would be very proud." The call ended. I stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by family, but not my parents. Not the two people who should have been the first to celebrate. Grandpa said quietly, "You can stay with me. I have the spare room. It's yours for as long as you need it." I looked at him. "I don't want to cause problems." His voice was ice. "You're not the problem. You never were." Dad stood up. "We need to talk." Grandpa's voice cut through. "Not tonight. This is my house. And that's my granddaughter, who just found out her dead grandmother believed in her more than her living parents ever did, who just found out she's getting $75,000 to support the education you told her she wasn't capable of, who just found out everything you told her about herself was a lie. So no, Richard. Not tonight. Tonight she's coming home with me." I looked at my parents. Mom was still crying. Dad was staring at the table. Neither of them said anything. I went upstairs, packed a bag, everything I needed. Laptop, clothes, toothbrush, the Caltech welcome packet from the back of my closet, the NASA badge I'd hidden in my desk drawer. Came back down. Trevor was sitting on the bottom step, face red, eyes swollen. "I'm sorry," he said again. I sat down next to him. "It's not your fault." "I saw your NASA badge," he said quietly. "In July. I found it in your bag. I knew what you were doing. I should have said something, should have defended you, but I didn't." "You were protecting me," I said. "By not telling them. You kept my secret." He looked at me. "I was protecting myself. I didn't want to be the one who wasn't special anymore." "You are special, Trevor, just not the way they wanted you to be, and that's okay." He nodded, wiped his eyes. "What you did, building all of that in secret, that's the bravest thing I've ever seen." I hugged him. He hugged back. Then I walked to the door. Grandpa was waiting. I walked past my parents. Didn't say anything. Didn't look back. We drove to Grandpa's house in silence. When we got there, he showed me to the spare room. It was exactly as I remembered. Clean, quiet. Pictures of Grandma Eleanor everywhere. On the dresser. On the walls. Her smile watching over everything. "Get some rest," Grandpa said. I set my bag down, looked at the photos. Grandma Eleanor smiling, holding me when I was 3 years old, both of us covered in flour from making cookies. Teaching me to plant tomatoes when I was 7, both of us kneeling in the dirt. Standing next to my telescope when I was 15, her arm around my shoulders, both of us looking up. She'd seen me, when no one else did. Before I even knew what I was becoming, she'd seen it. I lay back on the bed, closed my eyes. For the first time in 6 months, I felt like I could breathe. The next week was strange. My parents called 14 times in the first 3 days. I didn't answer. Let every call go to voicemail. They left messages. We need to talk. This is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. You can't just leave. I deleted them all. December 1st. Martin Brooks emailed the trust distribution paperwork. I signed it electronically. Designated my bank account for the transfer. Sent it back within an hour. December 3rd. I was sitting in Grandpa's kitchen eating breakfast when I checked my bank account. The number made me choke on my cereal. $82,200. My summer earnings. $7,200 Grandma's trust. $75,000, I texted Grandpa. It's real. He was in the next room, texted back. Eleanor kept her promises, always did. December 4th. 4 p.m. There was a knock on Grandpa's door. He answered. It was Mom. She looked terrible. Eyes red. Hair pulled back. No makeup. Can I talk to her? She said. Grandpa looked at me. I was standing at the top of the stairs. I nodded. He let her in. I came downstairs. We sat in the living room. Grandpa stayed in the kitchen, giving us space but staying close enough to hear. What you did was wrong, Mom said. I looked at her. What did I do wrong? You went behind our backs. I built a future you told me I couldn't have. We were trying to protect you. From what? Success? She started crying. From disappointment. From failure. From setting your expectations too high and getting crushed when it didn't work out. I didn't fail, I said calmly. I got into Caltech. I worked at NASA. I earned money. I did everything right. Better than right. But you lied. No, I said. You didn't ask. There's a difference. I told you I was working. You assumed it was nothing. You didn't care enough to ask where. She broke down completely. Full sobs. I thought I was doing what was best. Best for who? I asked quietly. She didn't answer. I let the silence sit. Then I said, when you're ready to see me, the real me, not the version you decided I was supposed to be, call me. Until then, I need space. She stood up, walked to the door, stopped. I'm sorry, she said. I know, I said. But sorry isn't enough yet. She left. No resolution, no apology that mattered, no promise to change, just silence. But I felt lighter anyway, because I didn't need her approval anymore. January came. Trevor got accepted to Calhoun Community College, local 2-year school. He planned to transfer eventually, maybe to UAH or Auburn if he could get his grades up. My parents didn't call the extended family, didn't make an announcement, didn't throw a celebration dinner. Just quietly signed the paperwork and told people when asked. Trevor texted me. I got in somewhere. Community college. It's a start. I replied immediately. That's great, Trevor. Really proud of you. He wrote back. I'm sorry I let them make you invisible. I said, you didn't make me invisible, they did. You were just a kid caught in the middle, and you tried to protect me by keeping my secret. That matters. He asked, can I see you sometime? I said, yeah. Coffee? I'd like that. We met the next week at the Starbucks on University Drive, sat outside even though it was cold, talked for 2 hours. He apologized again. Told me he'd known all along it was wrong. Told me he didn't know how to stop it without destroying the family. I told him it wasn't his job to fix them. He told me about community college, about maybe studying business, maybe trying to find what he actually wanted instead of what Dad wanted. I told him that was the smartest thing I'd heard him say. He said, you were always smarter than all of us. I said, you're going to be okay, Trevor. You just need to find your own way. Not Dad's way. Not the football dream. Your way. He nodded. I'm trying. We hugged before we left. Real hug. First real hug we'd had since we were kids. I think he's going to be fine. He just needs time and distance from their expectations. February came faster than I expected. I was packing for Caltech, clothes, books, my telescope, carefully wrapped in bubble wrap, box labeled fragile in 3 places. My parents asked if they could help. I said, I've got it. February 10th. Dad showed up at Grandpa's house. I answered the door. I want to apologize, he said. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. We stood on the porch. Okay. I was wrong. About everything. About you. About Trevor. About what success means. About what matters. I nodded. Yes, you were. Can you forgive me? I looked at him. Really looked at him. He looked older, smaller somehow, like something had broken inside him. Eventually, I said, but not today. Not yet. What do you need? I need you to earn it. The way I earned everything. Prove you see me. Not the version you wanted. The version that's standing here. The daughter who got into Caltech. Who worked at NASA. Who built a future you tried to burn. He flinched. I didn't mean... Yes, you did, I said. You meant it when you said it. You meant it when Mom lit the match. You believed it. You believed I wasn't worth investing in. You have to own that before we can move forward. He didn't say anything. I said, if you want a place in my future, you have to earn it. Just like I did. Then I went back inside and closed the door. Grandpa was standing in the hallway. He nodded once. She'd be proud of that, he said, touching the framed photo of Grandma Eleanor on the wall. I smiled. I know. February 15th. Moving day. Grandpa and I loaded everything into his truck, drove to the airport together. Before I went through security, he hugged me. You're going to do great things, kid. Thanks, Grandpa. And Rosella? Yeah? Your grandma was right. You've got Eleanor in you. Quiet. Brilliant. Built to last. You're going to do things she only dreamed about. But she'll be watching. So will I. I hugged him again. Harder this time. Then I walked through security. Didn't look back. On the plane, I opened my laptop, looked at the Caltech acceptance letter one more time. Welcome to the class of 2030. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my dorm at Caltech, room 237 in Blacker House. Looking out the window at the San Gabriel Mountains, the California sun making everything look golden and possible. Thinking about Grandma Eleanor, about the letter, about the garden and the telescope, and the way she used to say, "You're named after me, you know, so you've got to live up to it." My parents had sent a few texts since I'd left. Tentative, apologetic. We're proud of you. We miss you. Can we visit? I'd responded. Briefly, politely. Thank you. I miss Grandpa. Maybe in a few months. But I hadn't forgiven them yet. Maybe I would someday. Maybe I wouldn't. That was up to them now. They'd spent 17 years investing in the wrong child, building up the wrong future, burning down the right one. And when the truth finally came out, at a Thanksgiving table, in front of 22 witnesses, over the phone from Caltech and from beyond the grave, they had to sit there and watch everything they'd built collapse. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need their money. I didn't need them to see me, because I'd already built something they couldn't touch. And Grandma Eleanor had seen it all along. She'd left me her name, her letter, her love, her money. She'd left me proof that I wasn't invisible. I'd never been invisible. They just weren't looking. But I was done waiting for them to look. I was done being practical. I was done making myself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. I was Rosella Crowder, named after Eleanor. Quiet, brilliant, built to last. And the stars? They were just getting started with me. If you've ever had to build your future in silence because your family couldn't see your worth, if you've ever been told you're just being practical while someone else got called the future, drop a comment right now. Tell me what you're building. Tell me what they couldn't burn. Because you're not invisible. You never were. They just weren't looking. But I see you.